What we're going to look at here is how, as a pro photographer, I choose my lenses. Because it's not what I originally learned. You know, we have all these focal lengths, you've got your wide lenses, your mid ones, your telephotos, your zooms, your primes. And I owned loads of lenses over the years. Every Canon lens at some point has belonged in the studio. However, today, I own 2 lenses. And there's a really good reason for that, and it's to do with my decision process when shooting. So this is a medium format camera, so the crop factor is slightly different today. But this is a 90mm, it comes out at about 70. This is my telephoto lens. When I'm using this lens to take a shot, it's because I want compression. I want the background to expand behind the subject to make it as big as possible. I want the subject to be at a further distance from the lens to if it was wider, so it doesn't distort. This gives me a very natural distortion, not field of view, because we're in a studio, there's no such thing as a natural field of view in here. The background's plain. It doesn't matter. If you're shooting on location, for sure, but for what we do here, absolutely not. So having this gives me a nice flat subject. I can use it for flat lays if I want to have everything nice and round when we're shooting from above without them starting, the plates start to bow. Or if you're shooting a glass at an angle, you don't want it all starting to like bow out when you're a little bit closer with a wide lens. This allows me to keep distance from the subject and to stop any distortion because of that. Distortion is caused when you get too close. And obviously the wider the lens is on the same frame, you have to get closer and then distortion creeps in. So between the background and that, this is a good lens. Now yes, it is sharp. It's a 1980s lens. It's designed for a 6x7cm negative. I'm currently at f16. That's pretty much the sweet spot on this lens for some reason. On your Canon and Nikon and Sony lenses, it's probably more f8, f10, but f16 here is good. And that gets us a great sharp image. Now this is a macro shot because of the bellows, but this is not a macro lens. And you assume that macro lenses means you can focus them closer. Any lens can focus close on a bellows, but macro lenses maintain sharpness at that focus distance. This doesn't have that. This is something we're going to have to add to our repertoire of lenses here. Probably something with what's called a floating element, and that will allow us to really control the edge to corner sharpness with the floating element by moving that about as the lens becomes closer to the subject, is what you do with like super high-end macro photography. But this here, super long bellows, super close, we're f16. It's a nice, slightly distorted because we're so close, but not massively distorted because of the length of the bellows image. Does the job, but sometimes I want a bit of character, I want a bit of pizzazz, and I want to make the item look bigger than life, larger than life, really heroic. And for that, I've got a 50mm lens. Now you're probably thinking 50mm, standard focal length, we're on a bigger sensor here. This is about a 35, it's pretty wide. So let's swap these out. The first thing we're gonna do is turn the camera off, because if we take the lens off whilst the camera's turned on, this is kind of magnetic and it sucks all the dust in, and it's a mirrorless camera. And the biggest downside to mirrorless cameras is that they just get dust everywhere. We're gonna try and take this off without knocking over what's in set. This will be a bit of a, there we go. Off comes that lens. On goes the new lens. Bayonet that on. Put the bellows back in. That's about it. So come a little bit closer in. These bellows might be at their limits there. There we go back to f16, so it should be the same exposure. It's not always the case. Sometimes lens to lens there's a bit of a deviation. We'll turn the camera back on, see if capture one's playing ball and is going to let us tether again. It doesn't always. We're miles out of focus. Let's pull focus back in. And the first thing you'll notice here is that, let's get this right up to the front there. The background is no longer big enough. So we've really thrown that background out. We're now going to bring the subject much closer to the lens. And trying not to knock it off its little stand. It's about as close as we'll get, I think. We'll open the lens up for focusing. It's always easier to focus a wide open lens. There we go, nice and sharp. I'm just going to adjust that. Close the lens down again. Now the lighting is going to be slightly off here. Perfect. Well, it's not too far off, it works enough. But you can see now how much more background we've got. So we go to this previous shot where it was very flat, and now we've got all of this extra heroing going on. But what we're going to do now is bring it even closer to the lens. Probably going to have to remove the lens hood for this. Now this lens here can focus pretty much touching the glass. Try my best not to knock this off. So we're really close now, really close. Let's open up the lens again. Let's get that focus in. There. And then we're just going to have to slightly adjust the height of the camera. About there. Oh, left the lens open. Let's get another frame. So that's with the lens wide open. Obviously just tiniest bit in focus, but well overexposed. Now we're stopped down to f16. Brilliant. So Shane, could I quickly borrow you after telling you I didn't need you? Can we try and bring this red background a little bit closer in? So we're going to have to bring the background closer in, so we're now throwing it out so far. I'm also going to have to do some fancy focusing work here because we're so close and at the angle, it's not going to play ball. So we'll do that while Shane's moving. Much further this way with the background. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Bit more. Perfect. So we're just focusing up here quickly. Out there. Then recompose. And we're currently about 2 inches from the camera. There we go. Oh, still slightly missed focus, but we get the gist. Let's try it one more time on focusing. Aiming for the P. There we go, fire it from the computer just to be a bit less shaky. Perfect, that's better. Nice and crisp down the side. And we can see the difference we've got here between the two lenses. So if we just scroll back up to the previous shot. So the one on the left here, that is nice and flat and compact, and the one on the right is slightly heroed, it's slightly distorted. And these are subtle differences. And this is going from a 50 to a 90. This is quite a big gap in millimeters. But you can also see how if you didn't have them side by side, the creative choice wouldn't really matter that much for a lot of things. I like this 50mm lens here. It's not quite sharp enough, I don't think, for my work anymore with this new camera. So I'm probably going to swap it for the 65, but it's a good bit of kit. It's a good lens, gets super close focus, brilliant for flat lays. It just lets itself down to the macro capabilities a bit. The 90mm is fine. I could get the 110, but probably not going to happen. But this is pretty much my decision making here. Now for me, I prefer the look of the 90mm lens for this particular shot. I don't think distorting a tablet works. But if we're shooting a bottle from a low down angle, then I might go for the 50 to get that distortion. Or if the background context was really important, we wanted a huge background with loads of stuff going on, I'd go for the 50, have the hero up close and spread out that background. And that's pretty much the decision process for lenses when you're sort of working in a commercial environment. And that's why you only have 2 lenses. Do I want a wide background or do I want a compressed background? If I want it wide, 50, compressed, 90. Do I want to be really close and distorted and still get the image in? 50. Do I want to flatten the image and not have it distorted and step back a bit? 90. And that is pretty much the decision process and why I only own 2 lenses. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.